Hopefully you're starting to get the hang of these variable ones. So because it's a variable, I have my right triangle, and I'm going to think SOHCAHTOA. Step 1, start with the inside. Arc secant of x equals theta. So secant of theta equals x. I know secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. It's the cosine flipped. So I want you to pause the video at this point. Use that to build the triangle. Use Pythagorean's theorem to finish the triangle. And then step 3, find the tangent of the triangle and list your answer. Then come back to check your work, and we'll try the domain together. Let's see how you did. So secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. So my hypotenuse is x, my adjacent is 1. Used Pythagorean theorem to find my other side. Then tangent is opposite over adjacent, OA. So the opposite side over the adjacent side gave me this for my tangent answer. Now let's do the domain together. Start with the base domain of the inside. So my inside here is arc secant. You can reference your domain table that we made at the start of this lesson. The domain of arc secant is going to be negative infinity to negative 1. 1 to infinity. Now we adjust that domain however we need to for our answer. Only thing we have in our answer is an even root. So we have to take what's inside the even root, set it greater than or equal to 0 to guarantee that whatever is inside the root is positive. Now let's solve this. Remember, when you square root, you get plus or minus, which also changes your signs. So this says x needs to be greater than 1, which is this part of the domain, check. And x needs to be less than negative 1, which is this part of the domain, check. So our answer matches the domain we've got. We don't need to make any adjustments. We're good to go. Last problem for this lesson. Let's have you start this one on your own again. So we know that arc cosecant of 4x equals theta. So cosecant of theta equals 4x. Use that to build your triangle. Use Pythagorean's theorem to finish your triangle. And then step 3, find the cosine of that triangle. Come back to check your work, and then once again, we'll do the domain together. Let's see how you did. So cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. My hypotenuse is 4x, opposite is 1. Step 2, use Pythagorean's theorem to finish the triangle. And step 3, find the cosine, which is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse side. And that's what we've got. Now, base domain is the domain of the inside. You can check your domain table. So domain of cosecant is negative infinity up to negative 1 and 1 to infinity. Now, one thing that we're going to do before we adjust this domain. Remember, we talked about in 2 videos ago that if you have a number on the inside, you have to think of undoing that number. So I have a 4 on the inside. To undo that, I divide by 4. So I'm going to start by taking all of my domain and dividing everything by 4. Infinity divided by 4 is still infinity. So this is actually our base domain. This is what we're starting with. Now we need to adjust it however we need to. So first off, we have an even root here. That even root is in the numerator, so it just needs to be greater than or equal to 0. We're going to solve this real quick. Don't forget your plus and minus. So this one is saying x needs to be greater than or equal to 1/4. That's that part of the domain. And x needs to be less than or equal to negative 1/4. That's that part of the domain. The other thing we need to think of, we do have a 4x in the denominator, so that denominator cannot equal 0. So x cannot be 0. But notice that 0 is right here between negative 1/4 and 1/4. So 0 is already not included in our domain. So that means this domain is good to go. And that should be everything for your secant and cosecant. We are officially done with inverse functions. We've done all 6 of them. And in the last 2 lessons for this chapter, we're going to be using the inverse functions and everything we've learned to solve some trig equations. I'll see you there.